When war began on the 3rd of September 1939, the population of Great Britain were nervously thinking of waves of enemy bombers in Britain's skies, and so too were the pilots of RAF Fighter Command. And it wouldn't be long before they were scrambling into the skies, and after just a few days of the war, a Spitfire would shoot down the first aircraft over British territory. But it wasn't an enemy aircraft, it was one of our own. When Britain declared war on Germany on the 3rd of September 1939, the nation braced themselves for an expected and imminent aerial bombardment from the German Luftwaffe. The British government, the Royal Air Force, along with leading scientists and engineers, had spent the previous few years devising new ways to detect and defend against the impending threat. Of particular importance was head of RAF Fighter Command Air Chief Marshal Sir Hugh Dowding. He looked at all the available apparatus such as chain-home RDF radar stations, the observer corps, anti-aircraft batteries and of course the squadrons of fighter aircraft. And he combined them to create a communications and control system with the purpose of preventing German aircraft from inflicting damage on the British homeland. It would become known as the Dowding System. By the outbreak of war, the chain-home RDF system consisted of early warning radar stations stretching from Southampton on the English south coast all the way up the east coast as far north as the Orkney Islands. Any detections from these sites, along with sightings reported by the Observer Corps and anti-aircraft batteries, would be relayed via a dedicated telephone network direct to Fighter Command headquarters at RAF Bentley Priory. From there, vital information would be sent only to the relative group headquarters, where commanders would select the appropriate sectors and squadrons for a defensive response. This system, although still quite rudimentary in 1939, enabled the RAF to scramble its fighters much more quickly and with greater effect than before. The RAF squadrons were comprised of 12 aircraft at combat readiness, split into two flights, A Flight and B Flight. These flights were then split into two further subsections of red and yellow sections and blue and green sections. There would also be a couple of further aircraft acting as reserve. As the City of London was an obvious high-value target for the Luftwaffe, several RAF fighter squadrons were positioned in the southeast corner of England to protect the capital from attack, and as of the 3rd of September 1939, they were on high alert. In the early hours of the 4th of September, the RDF station started reporting targets, and at 2:50 in the morning, 74 Squadron Spitfires based at RAF Hornchurch in Essex and 56 Squadron Hurricanes from nearby RAF North Weald were scrambled to intercept an incoming raid. The incoming aircraft were, however, identified as a friendly bomber formation, and the Spitfires and Hurricanes were instructed to land. False alarms would continue, with Spitfires and Hurricanes repeatedly scrambling due to reports from the chain-home RDF stations. But in all cases, they were identified as friendly aircraft formations. And these repeated false alarms were undoubtedly keeping the young fighter pilots completely on edge. They had had constant scramble practice, but as yet, they hadn't seen a single German aircraft. Wednesday, 6th of September 1939, a bright morning, although with a layer of thick fog at ground level, and at 6:15 AM on the island of Mersey on the Essex coast, an anti-aircraft battery detected the sound of an approaching aircraft at high altitude. They strained to visually identify it, but due to the fog, this was impossible. So, as per the guidance, they telephoned in their detection, which ended up at RAF's 11 Group headquarters, who duly sent it on to North Weald sector and requested 6 Hurricanes of 151 Squadron be scrambled to investigate the unidentified aircraft approaching the Essex coast. The sector commander at North Weald, Group Captain David Lucking, rather than scrambling 6 Hurricanes as requested, he scrambled the entire squadron of A Flight yellow and red sections and B Flight blue and green sections. 151 Squadron were airborne at 6:30 AM and heading out to intercept. A disastrous chain of events would now follow that began with a technical failure at the RDF station at Canewdon. The antenna masts of the chain-home system emit their radiation over 360 degrees, but as they are only interested in radar reflections from the seawards direction, an electronic block suppressed any reflections being received from inland. meaning that the RAF fighters heading out to intercept should not be displayed on the RDF screens. Disastrously, this electronic block at Canewdon had failed. The entire formation of 151 Squadron Hurricanes were now being detected and mistaken as an enemy formation inbound. The RDF operators fed this straight into the system, and at 6:40 AM, all 12 Hurricanes of 56 Squadrons A and B flights were scrambled, along with 2 reserve aircraft, who were instructed to hang back from the main formation. The 14 aircraft of 56 Squadron were now also being picked up by the RDF station at Canewdon, and the confusion escalated rapidly. The response was to scramble more fighters. 20 miles to the south of RAF North Weald, at RAF Hornchurch, 12 Spitfires of 74 Squadron were scrambled at 6:45, followed by 12 Spitfires of 54 Squadron at 6:55, and another 12 Spitfires of 65 Squadron at 7 o'clock AM. The sky over Essex was now full of RAF fighters searching for a German raid that simply didn't exist. The ground defences were also on edge, and the Spitfires of 65 Squadron B flight came under fire from the anti-aircraft battery at Sheerness on the Isle of Sheppey. The aircraft flown by Flight Lieutenant G.A.W. Saunders was hit by bursting shrapnel, but suffered only minor damage. A far more significant event, however, occurred between the Spitfires of 74 Squadron and the Hurricanes of 56 Squadron. 74 Squadron A flight was led by Flight Lieutenant Adolf Sailor Milan and consisted of Red Section, which was Milan along with wingmen Flying Officer William Measures and Sergeant Ian Hawken, and Yellow Section consisting of Section Leader Flying Officer Vincent Byrne alongside Pilot Officer John Freeborn and Sergeant John Flinders. They were heading north across Essex when they got a visual on unidentified aircraft ahead. What took place next has been widely debated and argued over many years. Air Flight Commander Flight Lieutenant Milan gave the order to attack. As they moved into position, Yellow Section picked out 2 aircraft hanging back from the main formation and took them to be escorting fighters. Pilot Officer Freeborn opened fire on one and Flying Officer Byrne the other. These were not German escort fighters, however. They were the Reserve 56 Squadron Hurricanes flown by Pilot Officer Frank Rose and Pilot Officer Montague Hulton-Harrop. The Hurricane of Rose suffered serious damage and he was forced into a crash landing in a field in Worsted near Ipswich. He survived the crash. The Hurricane flown by Hulton-Harrop, however, was riddled with gunfire from John Freeborn. A bullet went straight through the back of his head. He was killed instantly. Shortly after, Freeborn, now euphoric, thinking he had shot down his first German aircraft, spotted what he thought was an enemy bomber. As he positioned himself to attack, his Yellow Section wingman Sergeant Flinders put himself in the path. Freeborn was screaming at him to get out of the way, until Flinders was able to tell him, "It's one of ours." Yellow Section broke off and returned to RAF Hornchurch, still of the opinion that they had chalked up their first enemy kills of the war. Byrne landed first and was promptly arrested, and as soon as Freeborn climbed out of his aircraft, he too was placed under arrest. Flight Lieutenant Milan, who had given the order to attack, had already landed and gone home. The terrible reality had now sunk in for Freeborn. He had just shot down and killed an RAF pilot. The court-martial of Byrne and Freeborn took place at RAF Bentley Priory on the 17th of October 1939 and held under strict secrecy. 74 Squadron Commanding Officer Squadron Leader Sammy Sampson was fully behind his pilots, and he arranged for the hugely experienced barrister Sir Patrick Hastings to defend them, along with another defence lawyer, Squadron Leader Roger Bushell. Flight Lieutenant Sailor Milan testified for the prosecution, and he claimed to have cancelled his order to attack, something Freeborn and Byrne emphatically denied and received the accusation of a barefaced lie from Hastings. The court-martial official records are not available, but what information has come out has shown that although Freeborn and Byrne should have confirmed a positive identification before opening fire, the incident was recorded as an unfortunate accident of war. Both Freeborn and Byrne were acquitted and returned to frontline duty. As much as the incident has become regarded as a truly amazing shambles, it did highlight shortcomings in the new Dowding system, and also hurried the arrival of early versions of Identification Friend or Foe systems, or IFF, which would mean ground radar operators would no longer confuse enemy or allied aircraft. Training and technology would also improve by the summer of 1940 in the Battle of Britain. Pilot Officer John Freeborn went on to become an exceptional airman, having achieved more operational flying hours than any other pilot during the Battle of Britain. During his flying career, he was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross and Bar, and rose to the rank of Wing Commander. Flying Officer Vincent Byrne was shot down over France, and he became a prisoner of war in 1940. He was held at the POW camp Stalag Luft 3, along with his defence lawyer Roger Bushell. Bushell would become famous as the mastermind behind the Great Escape. Flight Lieutenant Salem Milan would also go on to have an exceptional flying career, claiming 27 enemy aircraft and earning the Distinguished Service Order and Bar, as well as the Distinguished Flying Cross, and he rose to the rank of Group Captain. Pilot Officer Montague Hulton-Harrop was laid to rest under a war grave headstone at St Andrew's Church in North Weald, Essex. He has the unfortunate and tragic record of being the first British pilot to be shot down and killed in World War II. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please hit the like button and consider subscribing.